All right, everybody, welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. I am Glen West, your senior writer here at the site. LSU and Arkansas, about 24 hours away from kickoff. We're going to break some of that down. We're going to talk a little bit about the game. We're going to talk a little bit about what to know going into the game from an injury standpoint. And we're going to touch on some recruiting as well towards the end of this podcast. So, a lot to dive into today. But before we get into some of the nitty gritty. Just would ask you guys, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're following along with us on your Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you might be listening, to please like, subscribe, comment on the pod. It helps us as we try to grow this thing out and reach as many LSU fans as possible. So with that being said, LSU, about 24 hours away from Arkansas, and we had some pretty interesting news that came from the mouth of Frank Wilson on Thursday in regards to the quarterback position. I know we did a longer pod on the quarterbacks here earlier this week, but once again, they are in the news as Garrett Nussmeier has re-aggravated an abdominal injury that he suffered, I guess, back in fall camp was when the first injury first occurred. He, according to Wilson, aggravated it on Thursday. LSU, as of Thursday night, Friday morning, still had Garrett Nussmeier as probable for this game. So he's still looking like he's going to play for now. We'll see kind of what happens as we get closer to kickoff here. But it did just kind of bring up again just what has been just the latest in a really nightmarish season for Nussmeier, for this offense, for LSU. I mean, it really has kind of come full circle when you think about starting the season off with Nussmeier playing through this injury, and here we are. 3 games left in the season, and it's crept up again on him. And looks like LSU is going to try to get him ready to play. He's going to get treatment and things of that nature over the next 24 hours. And the hope is that he's able to give it a go for the Tigers. But this also just really wanted to reinforce, in my opinion, what LSU should be doing. And we'll see kind of what happens with Nuss. But I think it's just a great opportunity for Michael Van Buren here over the final 3 games. Whether Nussmeier is able to play on Saturday against the Razorbacks or not, we all knew that Van Buren was going to play in this game. And certainly now with Nussmeier's health at least a little bit up in the air, and certainly this abdomen injury is something that always just takes time to heal and things of that nature. Having this happen just a couple days before kickoff really makes you want to, I guess, reorganize your mind a little bit about the way that this could go for LSU. And I do think that Van Buren getting this opportunity, it's really an interesting one, because if he does start and he does play these last 3 games, he'll of course burn his redshirt season this year. I know that's been something that's been really talked a lot about over the last few days. Just kind of give you my opinion on it. I think Van Buren should play. I think he should play as much as he wants over these last 3 games because I do think that at the end of the day, he's playing for his future over these next 3 games, and he wants to put some good game tape on. Like, I think that's a very smart move on his part, because I do think that of the quarterbacks that are on this roster right now for LSU, he has the best chance of coming back and potentially playing for you next year. And you want whoever is in charge for this upcoming season to have as much data as possible on all these young players that LSU wants to have back in the program next year. Whether it's Trey'Dez Green, Harlan Berry, DJ Pickett, Deshaun Spears, maybe some of your young offensive linemen like Carius Kern. You want to have as much of a sample size of tape and film on these guys as possible. And I think Van Buren fits into that mold. And, look, I think from a redshirt perspective, if you're weighing the cost of burning this year and not using that redshirt season with the potential of maybe coming back and playing over the next couple of years, I think it's a risk that you take if you're Michael Van Buren, and it's certainly something that he's talked a lot about, I'm sure, behind the scenes, and why LSU seems so confident that they are going to be able to run him out here over the next 3 games and play pretty significant snaps. So I think that it's a good move for LSU. It's a good move for Van Buren to get as many reps as possible with this group. Yes, I know you're not playing for much from a season perspective as you go down the stretch this year, but I just think it's really important to get as many reps as possible for these next, decision makers that are going to be coming in here and evaluating this thing. Because, look, at the end of the day, LSU has a very unsettled room really across its roster, right? I mean, you probably expect that the next coach is going to bring in a transfer portal quarterback. You probably expect that he's going to rebuild this roster and a lot of the position rooms over the next couple of months, whoever that might be. And but having guys like Van Buren back in the program and having a solid foundation here of a guy that can maybe push whoever that next starter is and maybe even win that competition. I mean, like, nothing will be decided here in the opening 6 months of this next coach's tenure. And so I think it's a great opportunity for Van Buren to go out there and get some more playing time under his belt in this system, in this program, and really try to build some momentum, I think, going into next year, whether that's at LSU or whether it's to go potentially play somewhere else. And I also think that a part of this is, look, even if he doesn't burn his redshirt year this year, let's play the hypothetical. If he comes back to LSU and he still loses out on the quarterback competition next year, well, you can still burn a redshirt season next year by not playing, the amount of the total amount of 4 games or 5 games, whatever it might be, to get to be able to hold on to that red shirt. And so we'll see kind of what happens. We definitely know he's probably playing this weekend against Arkansas, against Western Kentucky and Oklahoma. We'll see if the tune changes there, and if he ultimately does decide to use that redshirt season. But I would lean into Michael Van Buren as much as possible over these next 3 games and see what you got, and see if what his future could potentially look like in purple and gold with him behind center. I think is a great move for not only him learning and also the future coach of this program learning as well. So as far as the game is concerned, look, I think this is really going to come down to the offense's performance. I mean, I do think Talon Green and the Arkansas offense are pretty lethal, and I'll probably put up some points. We'll be able to move the ball pretty consistently on LSU's defense. I could see them getting into the high 20s, low 30s as an offense because of Green's ability to not only pass, but to run the ball as well. This is a top 10 offense in a lot of important statistical categories. They're very good on third down. They're very good in the red zone. And Green is really, really good at being able to improvise and make some things happen when when plays are maybe not there to be made on his first or second read. I think he's really, really improved as a passer. I think he's improved as a runner, and just knowing when to balance that out. He's done a really nice job of that this year, and really has helped make this Arkansas offense one of the better ones in the SEC this year. But the problem is the Arkansas defense has been just as bad, if not worse, and they have been in the bottom 100s of pretty much every statistical category you look up, from third down to red zone to pass offense to rush offense, to pass defense to rush defense. They've just really, really struggled to stop anybody. They haven't held any opponent under 30 points since September 13th, which was coincidentally also their last win. So this is a defense that is really struggling. I think it's going to provide some opportunities for LSU to have some success in this game if they can hold up on the offensive line and give whether it's Van Buren or Nussmeier some time to make some plays. Certainly open up some run lanes for guys like Barry and Caden Durham. Caden Durham ran for 3 touchdowns last year in this game in Fayetteville, and has a history of success there against this team. So I would imagine that LSU really tries to pound the rush again this week. I mean, I know that they said they were going to last week against Alabama, but they got down. I think Harlan Berry only finished with 12 carries. I'd like to see that more in that 15, 16, 17 carry range for him this week, and then fill in Caden Durham with another 8 or 9, and just see where that puts you from a run pass balance perspective there. So. I'm really intrigued by this game for a couple different reasons. I think that the offense certainly needs to have a bounce back performance after not scoring a touchdown. They need to score. They need to finish with 7, and that's been a very common theme from Frank Wilson this week when we've talked to him. They have to be able to finish off these scores with 7 instead of settling for 3. I think this is a good opportunity for a guy like Trey'Dez Green to have a really nice day, and then Van Buren too. I mean, like if Van Buren is your guy that ends up starting on Saturday, and he gets a whole game to really kind of get his feet wet and get a chance to see what he looks like with this offense and with some of these younger players, I think that's a really beneficial thing for LSU. So that's just a couple of my thoughts on the game. I think I'd put LSU 35-30 in our prediction that we released on Friday morning. So I expect it to be maybe a little bit of a higher scoring game. I think it'll exceed the over under this week. I think LSU is going to have to create some of its own momentum in Tiger Stadium, and certainly the best way to do that is by getting off to a hot start and scoring a couple touchdowns or getting a couple stops defensively and trying to get the crowd into it as much as possible on an 11:45 kickoff against two teams that are really struggling right now. So those are just a couple of my thoughts on the game. I do want to transition here into recruiting a little bit. This is the final SEC conference weekend for the Tigers this year, and so they will have some double-digit guys on campus. They're going to have several commits from the 2026 class that we've been able to pick up on. Jabari Mack, Kenny Darby, Desireen Ellis, Kervin Johnson, Isaiah Washington. Those are just a couple of the 2026 commits. I think there's a few more in there as well that you'll see on campus and repping the Tigers this weekend from a commit standpoint. And then from a prospect standpoint, there's still a couple guys that I think here in the state that they could be looking to potentially add to the roster as a late kind of addition to the 2026 class. You've got Braden Allen, who's a 2026 wide receiver from Lafayette Christian. He's currently committed to Oklahoma. He'll be on campus this weekend. You've got Christian Brooks, who's another wide receiver. He's currently committed to, I believe it's ULL. He'll be on campus this weekend as well for LSU, taking in the last home game, a home SEC game of the year. And then DeMod Lewis is another guy, a defensive lineman. You might remember his brother Damian a couple of years ago was a pretty good player, pretty good guard for LSU. Was on that 2019 LSU national championship team. His younger brother DeMod is now coming up the ranks of the college of the high school prospects, and he's somebody out of Charlotte, North Carolina, who I think has got some fairly strong interest from teams like Florida State, from Nebraska, and now LSU. He's going to be in town visiting the Tigers this weekend as well. So a couple of 2026 guys that maybe they can add to this class. It's currently a 16-man class right now of scholarship players, and so we'll see what transpires here. But they've obviously lost a commitment this week with DeAnthony Lafayette on the defensive line, so that makes some sense there if they're able to get a young guy like DeMod Lewis on board here down the stretch. But and then you're also going to have some really interesting 2027 and 2028 guys. I think the big thing for recruiting for LSU this year is, or at least down the stretch here, is just trying to retain the class overall and keep it to where it's not getting you're not losing a whole bunch of players here down the stretch. I'm sure there will be some kind of movement with a couple more players. Certainly a guy like Bryson Cooley is somebody that you're going to want to watch from an offensive line perspective. Mississippi State's really upping the intensity there on Cooley. You got to keep an eye on Havon Finney out in California, the cornerback prospect who's really committed to LSU because of Corey Raymond and what he's been able to build at DBU here throughout his tenure as the cornerbacks coach. He's somebody that has grown a really strong relationship with Finney, and we'll see kind of what happens here. I think Finney's a guy that you got to watch for potential visits elsewhere. Nothing's been decided yet here over the last couple of weeks with Finney, but if he pops up somewhere this weekend or next weekend, I think it shows you that he's at least more than considering an opportunity to play elsewhere, and LSU's got to be able to be on top of that if he does ultimately jump ship from this class. So from a 2027 perspective, you're going to have your lone commit, Peyton Houston, the quarterback, is going to be back in town this weekend. I think it'll be a little bit more of a smaller batch of 2027 guys, and maybe we saw seen at the, I guess, the peak stages of the season this year. Albert Simeon, your big offensive lineman in Louisiana for 2027, he's going to be in town. That'll be fun to get a chance to see him for LSU. Obviously, a guy who's going to be a national recruit for a lot of these big top programs. Trey Martin, the running back, is going to be back in town. Carter Davis, a wide receiver, will also be in town here. He's somebody that has really kind of risen up the rankings, and I think is somebody you'll continue to see out of Gulf Shores, Alabama, continue to rise over the next several years. They have Jaden Bailey, who's a safety from the Birmingham, Alabama area as well. He's a 4-star guy, top 230 player in the country, considering all your Alabama schools, and LSU certainly throwing its hat in the ring for him as well. And then you kind of move down the rankings there with guys like Brandon Sherrard. He's another out-of-state guy that LSU is going to be bringing in this weekend, and so they're going to really kind of, I think, make it a point to try to get a head start on a lot of these players and continue to recruit this 2027 class. Like, a lot of these coaches are still going to be on the staff, and that's really all you can really do if you're LSU, right? You bring in some of these players and hope you can start building relationships from a program standpoint, and just getting some good visits throughout the locker room, and meeting some of the players and things of that nature. That's always really important on these game day visits. And in 2028, they're already starting on that as well. Armani Edwards is going to be one of the better players in that whole entire class. He's going to be in from Cypress, Texas. He'll be on campus as well. Number 3 player on 24/7 Sports for 2028 right now is Armani Edwards, and so they're going to certainly show him the ropes as a 5-star guy, or future 5-star guy, I should say, who's going to be a really talented offensive lineman. So that's just some of the recruiting stuff that we kind of hit on this week. I think it's going to be really important for LSU here, just to try to keep its 2026 class as intact as possible. There's a couple guys that I think you could see transition elsewhere, but I think that they've stayed on top of a lot of these guys, particularly from an in-state perspective, and there might be 1 or 2 guys that they lose out on here down the stretch over the next couple weeks. But I think overall this is going to be a really foundation class for whoever this next coach is. You got to get some of these younger players in here and developed and things of that nature. But it will be really interesting to see kind of who sticks, and maybe what else we learn here over the next couple weeks with the December 3rd signing period kind of coming to a close. So those were just a couple of things we wanted to hit on from a game perspective, from a recruiting perspective. We'll be back talking about the LSU-Arkansas game. We'll certainly have a lot more recruiting and coaching search stuff for you guys over at the site as we continue to get closer to hopefully LSU finding its next head coach. Some interesting stuff has already surfaced this week. We've been able to talk to a couple of our national insiders who still think this is a premier job out there, despite everything that's going on right now. We've reached out to an agent, and we've got an agent's perspective that you can find over at the site. And I mean, obviously, as LSU heats up their search and their meetings and their conversations with these agents, having that perspective, I think, is important as well, and how that industry is viewing the LSU job with all that's been going on. So you can check all that out right now over at the site. We'll have much more coming throughout the weekend, and certainly in the next week as LSU continues to ramp up their search for their next head coach. But for now, I'm Glen West, and thanks for watching and listening to the Go 24/7 podcast.